Oi! What's going on, YouTube? Ron here. No, I'm just kidding, everybody. What is going on, guys? We are back. I apologize for the horrendously fake Australian accent, but I had to give my Aussie brethren some love because we are in the Brisbane, the legendary tier light cruiser, which is the newest campaign to come to World of Warships Legends. That's right, we have another legendary tier campaign. It's ironic that the last legendary tier campaign we had was the Mino, which is basically the sister ship of the Brisbane. There are a few slight differences, however, which do make the Brisbane something I would definitely consider purchasing the Admiralty backing for. On top of the Admiralty backing, in this update you get a bunch of the winter coins, which can be used to purchase the USS Ohio. I'm going to try and do a video breaking down the costs and how to get the Ohio or the other ships as cheaply as possible, so stay tuned for that in the future. In the meantime, though, let's go ahead and talk about this game we have here on North. You can see we are already lining up a pretty decent torpedo strike. That is one of the strengths of this boat. A 13.5 kilometer torpedo range is a huge advantage, considering you have a little bit worse concealment as we get detected here by Mr. Jaquil, a viewer of the channel, and him and everybody else on this flank wanted me a little bit. You can see our target icon, the little eyeball, turn red. That is one of the unique traits in the 4th slot of Mr. Harold Farmcone, which of course we will go over at the end of the video, as well as the stats to this boat. But basically, that perk allows us to tell when there's a salvo in the air. When that eye kind of turns red, we know that some shells are on the way, which is very helpful, considering that this thing was wrapped in a Pepsi can around the base of Explodium. I have been dev struck 3 or 4 times already in this thing. One was pretty peculiar because I was full health and I got hit by 2 Yamato shells. I will probably be doing an investigative, 60 minutes inside to figure out how that happened. But basically what I'm trying to say is you do not want to get shot at or even hit in this thing. So having that target indicator is a very useful tool. Here, after launching our full complement of torpedoes, we kind of pester this Prince Ruprecht in the cap here, becoming detected for just a moment while lobbing some HE at it. And that's right, HE, this thing does have access to high explosive, which you might be thinking, Aaron, this has got to be the most broken ship ever. Well, not really. In exchange for the HE, you do give up your smoke screen. You can see the radar in the down D-pad slot. I wish you could customize which D-pad selection went to each consumable. A few times in the heat of the moment, I have fat thumbed that, but on top of that, you do sacrifice a little bit of reload time, and as we mentioned, this thing is made out of Explodium. If you get shot at, you will be taking a massive chunk of damage. So, this cruiser relies on positioning heavily. You probably can run an agile build. It is honestly quite the disappointment that Hipper has decided to take a little break from Legends, because not only is this ship Australian, but I'm sure it would have, we actually do Hipper a little bit of justice in this video, mainly because we are slightly agile out here, although I never run a full agile build except for maybe on my Italians, because I just don't think sacrificing everything and putting it into rudder is necessary. But that being said, I think the ship would probably excel at that. It has some decent maneuverability already, so you couple that with a few inspirations and commanders, and I think she would do just fine. But just as we talked about, here is a lesson in positioning. We are spotted briefly, but we have all of these ships coming to A, and of course we are already down 2 teammates. I don't know, it was definitely update day, but it was one of the update days to remember, let me tell you that. But here you can see we are heavily outmatched and being fired upon, as again, that icon is turning red. So we're going to throw some torpedoes, and the general, they're basically zoning torpedoes. I'm guessing where these guys are going to be. At 11 and 12 and even 13 kilometers, it's very difficult to predict what somebody's going to do by the time those torpedoes get there. But we're just throwing them in the most common areas right around the edges of islands and hoping that we get a hit. But here's a good example of kind of what we're talking about. A few penetrations, and we're honestly a little bit lucky that none of those were Citadel hits. You only have a 16mm bow and stern, so you are overmatched by literally every battleship, as we kind of have a slight stroke there with the auto-aim as it wanted to pick a different ship. But we wanted to pick that ship because he was kind of spamming us and he was close to one of our allies. On top of that, he was in our concealment range. So now that he is eliminated, we can stop shooting and reposition, which is definitely an art and something you're going to have to really pay attention to in this boat. Shooting all the time, as I've seen teammates do tonight. We saw Brisbane on stream today just sail directly in and last about 90 seconds, which is honestly more than I can say I last in other areas, but no, I'm just kidding. Really paying attention to your positioning, trying to get those permanent fires, combination with your torpedoes. As you can see, our damage total is still ticking because we have a permanent flood on that Heisen. But we're going to go ahead and, like we talked about, use our concealment, reposition here, and see what our team needs. I have no idea what they were doing at C, but there were 6 ships, or at least 5 at A, so they needed to hurry up. But we get a good team kill there to kind of even out this game a little bit. We're still down pretty mightily on points, as well as ships, and you can kind of see this Giuseppe, which I don't hate his position, I just don't love it, kind of put himself out there, and then he decides to turn broadside, so he is going to go down. So we do have some heavy lifting to do. As we can see, one of our battleships go around the don't go around. There's a sign on PC around that island there that says do not go, or battleships do not go around there. So especially on Legends, don't waste your time going around there. But we're going to go ahead and drop some more torpedoes and basically repeat what we just did. I could rush in here, but like we talked about, the armor scheme on this ship is just so fragile. You really can't do any sort of brawling unless you have absolutely the right, set of islands, and these are not really it, especially because we don't really know where the destroyer is either. You can see we are now located, so if we don't make it to that little alcove there inside of A and we get spotted by that destroyer, we are in a lot of trouble. But we put some torpedoes like we talked about in those lanes, and you can see that Ruprecht on his way to, it looks like 2 or at least 1. I feel like sometimes I get really unlucky with these torpedoes, right? Because he ends up stopping. Whether or not he had his hydro on, we will never know. But he stops just in time to eat one right on the nose. That is when we become detected. Why did we become detected? Well, there is a destroyer in our concealment ring. Unlike the Mino, you do not get a full stealth radar. But that Smallin must have popped his engine boost or something, as we get another torpedo hit and a fire on that Ruprecht, and there is the Smallin. So on top of that, we are also being lobbed by, I believe, the Heisen, or at least the Mino there. You can see it at the top of the screen. But we want to take care of the biggest threat first, and that is the Prince Ruprecht. Why? Because he can easily overmatch us. We give him a little shimmy, a little shake, and we dodge another salvo from him. Again, we talked about it. You can run Agile, but there is only, I think the last perk on alert gives you like 3% for rudder, and that is the only rudder modification we have, and we're still dodging these shells with ease. Paying attention to that on top of having that perk on alert allows you to know when you're being shot at, and that is, like we've talked about so many times, why I use overview camera, so I can see the shells coming kind of from a larger point of view. But with a little bit of backpacking and connecting a few torpedoes, we have given our team a chance. We are still down on points, which is why I try to ping the cap. Unfortunately, it grabbed the Heisen there, but I'm trying to tell him to get into the C cap, and he actually doesn't. I have no idea why. Him and that other battleship were right next to it. Battleship mains, please do more than look down the binoculars trying to hope for dev strikes. But regardless, we have to move back in. You can see the Heisen is out there on the right. We're not necessarily exactly sure where the Smallin is, but we know he is kind of most likely between us and the Mino, at which point the Mino and I start exchanging blows. I have a slight advantage due to my HE, and that is when the Smallin pops up. And we definitely need to target him. You can kind of see that we're still down on points and caps, so we want to get him off of the board. We throw a few salvos. He actually beaches, which sometimes throws off your aim, but with the slow shell velocity and long travel time of the shells of the Brisbane, we actually connect a few as a result of that. But we're going to go ahead and push in here and try and radar that Smallin, get him off the board, while also being cautious of that Heisen who is in the background. You can see that we are still detected inside of our ring, at which point we pop our radar. There is the Smallin. I thought he was going to beach again, so we lead these shots just a bit short, and unfortunately, of course, he doesn't. So we are off to the races trying to guess his speed and direction. The shorter duration of this radar is definitely something that is a balancing factor for sure as we connect a few of these shells. You do have the HE, but I think they could have given the Brisbane the longer radar. I'm not exactly sure why they shortened it so much. They didn't really increase the range. The Mino is like 9.9, and the Brisbane is like 10, so definitely not enough to justify losing almost half of the time. I think it's down to 22 seconds, not quite half, but Here, we are in range of this Heisen, and he has eyes on us. As you can see, that indicator once again turns red, so we're going to try and dodge just a little bit. We turn in. We get pretty lucky with the salvo missing off to our left there, which is just a little bit of dispersion as he fires his front guns, and I think we get a little bit lucky again. Yeah, he just got one overpen or penetration. So those salvos, just be wary that sometimes they are not overpens. You get massively yeeted. But we switch to the AP and actually get the elimination on that Heisen, and this is actually going to do it for the game. We actually, the rest of this game is just me sitting in A-cap capping and trying to go after this Smallin as he runs away. Our team, the two battleships at sea, decided to just sail away from it, and if we didn't get the A-cap, we probably would have lost. But that's the video. We'll go ahead and skip ahead to the end. But there you guys have it as the Smallin decides to shoot at the end, letting us know he survived, I guess. I don't know. I love when destroyer players do that. 160,000 damage, a few torpedo hits with a nice 2980, almost 3K base XP in the first place there. Shout out to our team. They did things, I guess. But that is the Brisbane. Let's go ahead and review her modules. But here are the modifications we were running. Aiming systems mod 1, which I could probably switch for AA mod. You don't really need aiming systems, but whatever you want to run in that first slot. Steering, because there is no propulsion. Of course, concealment. And then we were running a legendary reload mod in slot 4 there. Next, let's go ahead and look at the specs of her ship. The survivability, you saw it on screen, 43,300, which is really just a number you will find yourself disappearing pretty quickly. The guns, 5x2, 152s, 15.4 kilometer range. You could run, beyond range in the commander slot, and we'll go over that in just a minute, but I really don't think you need it. The reload time, which is significantly slower than the Mino, is 4.2. The torpedoes is where this ship really shines. 4x5 of them, so 20 total, with a 13.5 kilometer range, 65 knot speed, and a 16,000 max damage there. You get those going on each side, so you throw a few fires out, and you've got a pretty good ship that can harass the enemy. AA defense is similar to the Mino in 100 there. Maneuverability, 34.5, 750 turning circle, and an 8-second rudder. You could probably get that down very low. I'm sure when Hipper returns to the game, if he does, he will get that down to about 0 seconds. So the ship is just constantly spinning in circles. But the ship is very agile, very maneuverable. So if you want to go that route, you certainly can. Her concealment is 10.4 as compared to the Mino's 9. I think with this same build or similar build and inspirations, I think I have a 9.9 concealment on Mino. So very similar, but slightly worse in that regard. Let's briefly take a look at the sonar and radar, 3.4 of torpedoes and 4.9 of ships. We are running fully packed, so we do get 3 of them. The radar is a nice 10 kilometers, and like we talked about in the game, it's only 22 seconds. I think it should be either longer range or longer duration. I'm not sure why they kind of, neutered that radar as much, but that is what you get on the ship. And of course, no smoke screen. Let's go ahead and review the tin can armor scheme here. 16 millimeters in the front and, of course, 16 in the back with a nice little coat of 16 on the top. Basically, you're just, all that's doing is arming the shells. 16 can be overmatched by, like, every super cruiser and above. So you're not really protected from anything unless you can sort of get an angle on that Citadel belt. And I think it was a Buffalo or something. I wasn't quite paying attention and took a shot very similar to this angle right now on the screen, and yeah, we got sent back to port pretty quickly. So make sure you're really paying attention to your positioning. As we said, this thing is an explodium Citadel covered by 40 cents worth of recycled Pepsi cans. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the commander, Mr. Harold B. Farncombe there. Farncombe. His base trait is pretty useless because his main, I guess, ship was the Perth, which is kind of that smoke, but you do get a little bit for the main battery reload. But the other perks are very useful. Burn it down, as well as igniter, and you could make an argument for beyond range. I just don't think it's quite that necessary. We are running punch through, and there's the 4th slot we were talking about on alert, the rudder shift time, as well as that target indicator. We did decide between refill station and fully packed. I went ahead and went with fully packed. Refill is just, I don't know. I think you really need that third radar just for how this ship plays. I don't really do that with a lot of my other radar cruisers. I think DPM is more important, but 4.4 compared to like 4.8 reload is just not necessarily enough to justify losing that shorter duration radar. And I think because it's shorter duration, that's why I'm just choosing it. But here I actually compare a few of the mino stats. So if you want to pause the screen and kind of look at those, but very similar. Just, you know, obviously big distinction there is that smoke screen. But that's going to do it for me. I'm not feeling the best. I love you guys, and I will see you later. Have a great day. Aaron out. Peace.